Now I'd like to show you some other options, some variations on the same process that might, hopefully, will get your imagination going. For this one, I'm going to take my same original image of John Lennon. I've got another piece of watercolor paper. Instead of using my matte medium, I'm going to use just regular acrylic paint. Matte medium is nothing more than clear acrylic paint. So the process is going to work the same, except for instead of making a transparent layer where I can see whatever is on the surface that I'm transferring to, I'm going to have an opaque layer of acrylic paint. And I'm just going to put a little drop on there, and then I'm going to take a palette knife and scrape around a little bit, so I've got kind of an interesting mark that happens there. Okay, and I'll wipe off the excess onto a paper towel. And then what I'm going to do is put my image down into that wet paint. Do the same thing, starting in the center and push out towards the edges to make sure I've got an even coverage of the paint. Then I'm going to let that dry. Now I'm ready to rub. You can see what happens is the only place that image transferred is where it came into contact with wet yellow paint. Now I'm going to do a second layer using a texture that I photocopied out of a book of landscapes. What I'm going to do is just tear it, and again I'm going to put my wet paint down there. Remember, it's going to be a transparent layer, so we can do as many layers as we want to and still see what's behind it. Okay, I'm going to put a little bit more paint down this time so I make sure I get a good clean transfer. Alright, now starting in the center and pushing out, make sure that the blue texture comes into contact with matte medium. Now it's dry, and I'm ready to rub the paper off. Okay, and there we go. You'll remember I had that blue texture from the book of landscape photography. You can see where it cut across this yellow swatch, and we can see the two combine, blue and yellow. We're going to get this kind of dark green there. Third, I'm going to do something a little bit more complicated here. I'll start with my watercolor paper, my image of John Lennon, and here I've got just some scribbles that I had on my computer, an image of scribbles that I printed out. I've also got a pencil, just a regular graphite pencil, some charcoal, and I've got a chalk pastel. So I've got a bunch of different traditional art rendering materials, and what I'm going to do is first I'm going to take the matte medium and I'm just going to glue this piece of paper down on my watercolor paper. So this is not going to be a transfer, this is just going to be a piece of collage. I'm not transferring anything, I'm just gluing it down. To get that to stick really well, what I usually do for any kind of collage is I put matte medium on the surface that I'm gluing it to, and I also put it on both sides of the paper that I'm gluing down. Now with transfer, you don't want to get any of the matte medium on the back side of the paper. You'd be in trouble. But with collage, we do want to get both sides of the collage element saturated with matte medium. Okay, so I'm going to take the piece of paper here, and I've got matte medium on both sides of the paper as well as the surface that I'm gluing to, and then I'm just going to rub it down. The reason I do that is because if you only put the matte medium on one side of the paper, or only put it on the surface that you're gluing it down to, you're going to get rippling in the paper. So you get everything saturated with matte medium, and it's going to stick down much nicer. Much more nicely, much nicer. Now I've got the collage element. I'm going to take this piece of chalk pastel, and I'm simply going to run a mark, run a mark down here on the paper. You can see I ran into a little bit of the matte medium down there at the bottom. I'm going to run just a simple swish of red down there, and maybe let's do a little scribble off to the side there, just to see what the difference between that broad open mark and a harsher or more a darker mark would look like. Then I'm going to take this pencil and I'm just going to draw, I'm just going to draw some circles here along this line. I'm just doodling. I'm not really paying too much attention to what I'm doing. And then finally, just so we can see what it looks like, I'm just going to do a little scribble of charcoal. Again, I've got a collaged element, I've got a little swoop of chalk pastel, I've got little circles that I drew with a pencil, and I've got this little scribble that I made with regular compressed charcoal. In this case, I need to really apply the matte medium liberally so I don't smudge the chalk pastel or pencil or charcoal here. And I'm going to cover the whole thing, even the areas that I know I'm not going to be transferring onto. I'm going to cover the whole thing so I seal the matte medium, or the matte medium seals the charcoal, pencil, and chalk pastel. Okay? So again, putting a nice even layer of matte medium on the area that I want to transfer to. Then I'm going to take my image, same image I've been using all along, put it face down into the matte medium, start in the center, push out. Now you can see my image didn't cover all of those different elements that I've added here, so the transfer is not going to cover up everything. Let's go ahead and see what that looks like. I'm going to take this water and start rubbing. Alright, and there we have it. You can see all that information behind the image that we transferred. We can see the scribbles from the collage element. We can see this red that comes down through there. For this one, I want to do one more layer. What I have here is a small photocopy reverse image of a word. It actually says song when it's correctly oriented. So what I'm going to do here is take a little bit of matte medium, and I'm going to put it, let's see, where should I put it? I'm going to put it down here, down here. Okay, so I'm doing a transfer on top of my transfer. Because I'm using matte medium, I can do multiple layers and see all the previous layers underneath. Alright, let's take a look and see how that looks. I used a hair dryer actually to speed the drying time up a little bit. And there we go. You can see in this case, the image that I transferred was a white word. And because white on an image, on a photocopy, is the white of the paper, I didn't transfer anything. So I can see everything on that collage element behind it. And all this black, that was what came from my transfer. Here are my 3 finished products. In this one, remember, it was just a straightforward transfer, just a black and white image of John Lennon with some writing on it. In the second one, instead of using matte medium, I used yellow acrylic paint. So instead of seeing white behind my image, the white of the paper, I see yellow. And then I did a second layer where I transferred this blue photo texture on top, so I can actually see that yellow shape come up behind that layer of transparent blue pigment. In the third one, it was a little bit more complicated. We used chalk pastel, we used little pencil circles, we used a little scribble of charcoal. Then we transferred our image of John Lennon on top of all those things, and we can see them behind the image. Then I did a second transfer on top of that of this word song. And then I could develop the images even further. I could do multiple layers of transparent transfers. I could do more collage. I could do more paint. I could do pencil, charcoal, you name it, whatever you'd like. You can do many, many layers. So hopefully you get a feel for what is possible with this very simple photo transfer technique.